Welcome to part 2 of Movies from Off the Beaten Path on this week's episode of Semi-Retired with your hosts Richard Bonomo and me, Dave Farrant.
Dave, it's your turn for your number 6.
To remind listeners who listened to part 1, I'm remaining in 1973 for my first movie this week, and I'm remaining in the United Kingdom with a movie called The Wicker Man that I found in a video store one day, and I don't know why I picked it up, but maybe it was the illustration on the front cover. At any rate, it's one of those movies that I saw and has remained with me ever since. It was one of those movies that kind of just stuck in my mind so deeply because of the essential odd. The main actor is a gentleman by the name of Edward Woodward, who went on years later to be the lead actor in a TV series called Minder, I think it was.
The Equalizer.
The Equalizer. Sorry, not Minder, The Equalizer. So Edward Woodward. Also in this movie is Christopher Lee, the famous, kind of like Vincent Price's alter ego, right? These two guys.
You know, him and Bella Lugosi.
Yeah. You needed like a horror guy in England. You call Christopher, you call Vincent, and they were there sort of thing. Yeah. In like fashion to The Theater of Blood, where Vincent Price said that it was his favorite movie, Christopher Lee has said The Wicker Man was his favorite movie that he made as well. Because he was often cast in kind of slightly cheaper roles, and this is not that case. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at a story whereby a police sergeant is sent to a small island off the coast of Scotland to investigate the disappearance of a young girl. And he's a very prudish man, you find out, a very Protestant, upstanding man. And
uptight.
You're uptight. Yeah, uptight would be the word, yeah. He arrives on Summer Isle to investigate the disappearance of this girl and discovers that nobody seems to be really interested in helping him as he makes his inquiries. Yeah. And, you get to see the characters on this island. They're very, very English rural people of the oddest type. And, you just get these sense that something's not quite right here as he pursues his investigation. He meets Christopher Lee, who is the Lord of Summer Isle, who kind of blows him off. Yeah. And again, he's this sergeant, police sergeant, Howie, I think it is getting increasingly frustrated with people. He goes to the girl's school, and kids there are saying, well, she's not really, I forget the name of the girl he's looking for. She's not really dead. He can't figure out what's going on. And he encounters the pub master, the landlord, they would call it in England, the landlord's daughter, played by a very young Britt Eklund. Perhaps prior to dating Rod Stewart, I'm not sure.
No, she was dating Rod Stewart.
Okay, at the time. Yeah. Who performs, I think this might be the price of admission alone, a nude fertility dance in an attempt to corrupt the sergeant as he's sleeping in the next bedroom.
Yeah.
Anyways, things start to escalate, and there's this creepiness to it. And you're looking at it, I recall at the time going, what the fuck is going on here? Like, it didn't make any sense to me at all. I feel like I'm maybe giving it away a little bit, but you start to realize that these people are pagans. They're not Christians. The island is inhabited by pagans. They worship the old gods, and their harvest has failed. And they need to do something in order to ensure a healthy harvest next year. And that's where our boy, Sergeant Howie, comes in.
Fished in he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, great movie. I saw this too with my wife. We came across it one day. It was streaming on something. We came across the thing we watched, and it's become one of our favorites. We watched it multiple times. We even watched the Nicolas Cage remake of it, which is set in America with instead of being a Summer Isle, it's one of the Isles in the San Juan Islands off of Seattle.
Is it worth watching the remake?
It's okay. I find what's interesting is that right at the end, they do a little thing and you figure out how they get the guys to come to the island. There's a little scene right at the end that you don't get in the British version.
Right.
It's okay. I mean, it's Nicolas Cage. It's Nick Cage.
Enough said, yeah.
And there's a weird scene at the beginning, which I don't know. I didn't think was necessary there, but it's not bad. It's interesting to watch. It's not a terrible movie, the Nicolas Cage one, but I think the British one is a much better version. Now, the story goes that Rod Stewart, when he found out that this movie existed, Rod might have dated Britt after this, you're right. It was either during or just after. He apparently tried to buy up all the copies in England so nobody would see Britt Eklund naked.
Interesting. Really? Yeah. Talk about, I mean, you talk about getting, your shorts in.
Do you think I'm sexy?
Yeah. Now, see, I had heard and seen, because you obviously see this character. She's the landlord's daughter. And then when it came time for the great unveiling, that they like shipped in somebody else. So I don't even know if we're looking at Britt Eklund's backside or not.
Interesting backside, eh?
Yeah, well, there you have it.
Usually we're not looking at the back.
Yeah,
anyways,
right.
Okay.
So anyways, not to sound too, not to obsess too much about that part of the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, and again, that's part of this whole, there's just a creepiness to it. Just this crawling sense of dread.
Yeah. With a beautiful finish.
Oh, beautiful finish.
God,
yeah. When he meets the Wicker Man.
Yes. Yeah,
and I thought to myself at the time, you know, that sense of the pagan, the old gods, the pagan religion, and pray, like it almost made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up on end. Almost like I had this vestigial sense of what that must have been like. I'm probably overthinking it here, but it just, I'm getting shivers thinking about it now.
Well, it's kind of like when you think of The Witch, right? Where something bad would happen.
Yes.
You know, we're going to attribute it to this. So what do we do?
Yes.
Oh, we must do penance. Well, this is kind of the same thing,
You're
right? Their crops fail. So what are they going to do?
Yeah. You're right.
There's a corresponding Britt Eklund scene in the Nicolas Cage version, whether there's a fertility dance or not. I don't remember.
I'm not going to watch it then.
All right.
Richard, your next one.
So my next one is a bit of a cheese ball. It's a movie that did not do very well and is often mocked. It's called Starship Troopers.
Okay.
Which I ended up watching about 2 days ago. Again, for like the 100th time. Maybe not 100, maybe 99. So it's a 1997 movie directed by Paul Verhoeven, famous for RoboCop.
Love that.
Casper Van Dien, you know, Denise Richards, Dina Meyer. And you gotta love the description. Humans in a fascist militaristic future wage war against giant alien bugs.
Well, who would want to watch that?
And that's the gist of the movie. But if you just go with that, you're gonna miss out. So the movie is based on a book by Robert Heinlein, the science fiction director, and it was basically an anti-war book he wrote. You know. And when Verhoeven decided to make the movie, now when you watch the movie, it's super campy. Okay, because it starts off with almost like an infomercial, breaking news, blah, 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 blah. And so they'll have this announcer and there's like a little frame around it. And it's almost like you're looking at a website and there'll be like a cursor and there'll be the words, you know, for more, want to know more at the bottom. And then like a little cursor will come and click on it and it'll go back to the movie.
So it's kind of making fun of itself a little bit?
Well,
is it doing that?
This is the thing. You're not sure when you're first watching it. You're going, what's going on here? It's very, very military. Join the army. You know, they want you to join for you because you can get citizenship, right? So it's like in the future. So it's not very well explained, but it seems like people don't all have citizenship and you have to perform certain deeds to get citizenship. And then if you have citizenship, then it's easier to get a license to have children. Otherwise, it might take longer. So there's all these benefits. So they're a very militaristic thing. It takes place, you think it's the US, but no, they're in Buenos Aires. Everybody's beautiful. Everybody looks great. They're all coiffed and sculpted.
I like that. Coiffed and sculpted. Two things I've never been.
that should be the name of my salon.
Yes, not bad, actually, yeah.
So, you know, it's like it's supposed to be high school and, you know, it's the year-end party and they decide, they decide to join the army. And every so often they'll intercut with these things and they show, we're fighting the bugs. And they're fighting this race of alien bugs that's been bombarding the earth. And so this war has been going on forever and they're trying to find a way to defeat these aliens, which are like kicking their asses. And so, our main characters enlist in the army and join the fight and so on and goes on. And you get a lot of scenes of them fight. The special effects for the bugs, even though this movie is from 97, really hold up. I mean, the bugs are really well done. They are terrifying. They're like giant mix between a praying mantis and a grasshopper with these choppers that can cut you in half and these legs that pierce through bodies.
Oh, really?
So yeah, cool. some of the death scenes are quite graphic and, you know, dismemberment and stuff. But the special effects for the spaceships don't quite hold up as well. All the spaceship stuff is a little bit cheesy.
Yeah.
You can almost see the frames and the strings, it feels like. And it's really, in a sense, overdone, right? It's got a really military feel. Join the army, you know, let's go. And a lot of critics really shit on it because they said, you're making a pro-war movie. You're making a pro-military, a pro-join the army movie. And Verhoeven were like, you fucking idiots. This was This was done tongue-in-cheek. Where they cut to a little commercial, and it's like a couple of soldiers are like at an elementary school, and one of the little kids says, "Oh, can I try your gun?" And he hands him like this really nasty-looking rifle, and the kids are playing, pretending to shoot each other. And then there's a scene where two kids, one's holding the barrel, one's holding the stock, and they're like pulling like tug of war, and they cut, and the guys like the barrel's pointing right at the kid, and they cut back to the soldiers, and the soldiers are just laughing. Kids will be kids. It's like this whole thing, and it's like a joke.
Irony is lost on some people. I don't know what to say. Well, you know, again, I've not seen this movie, so I can't comment on it. But you mentioned Paul Verhoeven and RoboCop, and in like fashion, I mean, RoboCop was poking fun at the kind of Law and Order obsession of the mid 1980s.
Exactly. This is
Reagan world, you know.
Yeah, Reagan world. Yeah. We'll bring in these super cops to solve our. So a lot of this too, and then the whole series of trying to understand the bug, and then little videos to know the bug is to fight the bug, and they have all these little snippets of videos that come in and out, and some future tech where people send each other instead of calling each other on spaceships, and so they're watching. They get like a mini CD, and they plug it in, and they get a conversation with their loved ones or whatever.
You sold me. Yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah. You got to take it tongue in cheek because it's over the top, and then some of the language is over the top. Yeah, so a fun movie. A bunch of characters that you've seen in a lot of action movies are in there. Clancy Brown is in there too, and the other guy, I can't remember his name. He always plays a sergeant kind of guy in the armies, and it's a fun movie. It's just a fun romp. Take it as it is. It's making fun of the whole military thing, and I think it's a blast to watch.
Love it. I can't wait.
So Dave, yours now.
Yeah. So, in like fashion to your last movie, this one's a little bit over the top as well. It's called Prince of Darkness from 1987, and the director is John Carpenter, famously of The Thing and other great works. It stars in a supporting but key role as Donald Pleasance, who was in Halloween and was in Fantastic Voyage back in 1965 with Raquel Welch when they went inside the guy's body, all that
The Great Escape.
The Great Escape. There you go. The Great Escape. One of the, and Jameson Parker, who was half of the Simon and Simon duo.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I never saw.
I saw.
I never watched it, but I recognized the dude. And when I first saw this movie, I forget what drew me to it, but what I liked was it looked so 80s. And I was like, literally, I was of the age of like the people would be in this movie at the time. I felt like it was my life injected visually into a movie, like the way, like I had a mustache then. Jameson Parker has a mustache. He's wearing this particular jacket. I was like, "Fuck, I dressed like that."
That should be the show art. You and your mustache.
Yeah. Oh, it's horrible. At any rate, it's a story about evil, about intergalactic evil, and in this case, a group of graduate students and scientists uncover an ancient canister in an abandoned church. But when they open the canister, they realize that it contains an ancient evil, a strange green liquid, and an evil that will try to wipe out all of humanity. So that says a lot. So in the beginning, at the start of the movie, Donald Pleasance is summoned to this particular church because a priest there has died, and that priest died holding a small box in which was located a key. And there's a message left in the priest's diary about the sleeper is awakening and something has to be done. And this priest was part of the Brotherhood of Sleep, something like that. There's all this mumbo-jumbo going on. And we keep seeing in the movie, aligned planets in the sky. You'll see the sun with a crescent moon above it. There's this whole kind of planetary alignment thing going on. Turns out in the basement of this church is this weird kind of like intricate looking, almost like a giant water cooler full of this green swirling liquid. And there's this sense that something's going to happen anyway. So we wind up with all these young students, and there's kind of love interest going on. And scientists all jammed into this church for the weekend with all this equipment. They're going to monitor what's going on and what's happening. And you realize that gradually that there's this evil is overtaking the church. Alice Cooper, I should point out, plays a small role in this. The guy who was Alice Cooper plays a homeless person who gets like real creepy flavor to the movie. And there's a great soundtrack. There's this little kind of dun-dun-dun thing that goes on all through the movie that makes it. It's like there's like this little bass beat that happens all through the film. Anyways.
Well, just think of The Thing, right? Where he's got that dun-dun.
No, you're right.
Always happening.
You're right. That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, very reminiscent. That's a good point. So at any rate, they're all, and there's a bunch of quantum physics mumbo-jumbo that goes on as they try to spin, which doesn't really make sense. Like I'm a quantum physicist, but I realized it kind of didn't really make sense at all. So all these people wind up, these unlikely companions wind up in the church, locked in the church, and evil starts to overtake them. It's a romp. It's a little bit over the top. It's a little bit too cheesy maybe for some people. I loved it. I can watch it anytime. I watched it again a couple of weeks ago. I saw it because I have it in my iTunes library. I said, it's time. Crack open a beer. Prince of Darkness, can't lose.
Oh, interesting. I've never... So Prince of Darkness, usually when we think of the Prince of Darkness, it's the devil or Dracula or whatever. Is that ever... does that come forth?
Yeah, you're essentially given to understand that this is Satan.
Okay.
And I think something's happened. There's been like a supernova has gone off in a distant galaxy at the same time that all the planets are aligned. This is the mumbo jumbo, and it's caused this ancient liquid in this
the green goo.
The green goo to come alive and manifest in evil that begins to overtake people within the church on this particular weekend. Now, there's a love story between Jameson Parker and I think her name was Lisa Blunt, who was in Officer and Gentleman. Okay. And that kind of adds a little bit of spice to the whole thing. There's some kind of grossy special effects, not that great. People vomiting at each other. I get a real soft spot for this one. It just has this classic mid-80s feel and vibe to it, and the way they talk and the way they look, and kind of an exciting ending. I won't talk about the entire ending, but there's kind of a certain amount of meat to the final resolution to what's going on here. It has to do with time travel or time, and it's really neat.
Well, I have to give it a watch because I'd heard the name, but I'd never seen it.
Well, it's a good one. Richard, you're next.
So for my next one, it was keeping with the science fiction theme. Mine is Gattaca. 1997, Andrew Niccol directed, starring Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman, and Jude Law. Uma. And this would be, I believe, at the time when Uma and Ethan were married.
I didn't know
that. Yeah, they have a few kids, yeah. One of their daughter is in Stranger Things. So the description, a genetically inferior man assumes the identity of a superior one in order to pursue his lifelong dream of space travel. That's the gist of the movie. What's interesting about this is it's a science fiction movie set in the future. They're getting ready for this big exploration. They're going to take off in these ships, and they're training people. In this time, your genetics are analyzed. So everybody's like, oh, so you have to go and you get tested. Say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't be an athlete because there's a 77% chance that you'll have a heart attack under this kind of stress or whatever. And everybody is basically assigned roles based on their genetic makeup. And so our main character here, played by Ethan Hawke, has a genetic defect, something to do with his heart, that does not allow him to be in the space program. But he's made a deal with our other character, Jude Law. He plays the perfect specimen, but he's had an accident, so he's paralyzed now. And so there's this deal where they live together, and Jude gives him blood samples and urine samples and even scalp samples and hair samples that he can then take, and he passes off, and he has to go for like a urine test or a blood test every day. And they've got this very elaborate bag that he puts in his pants, so when he goes for a urine test, he can pee into the
so he's actually passing Jude Law's urine.
He's passing Jude Law's urine, his blood, his hair follicles, his dandruff, his skin flakes.
What comes up with this stuff?
Yes. It's really, really well done. And it's a movie with almost no special effects because it doesn't need it. That's not part of the story. Okay. And so there's scenes where you'll see Ethan Hawke at work, and he's working on his computer. Yeah. When his shift is over, he takes out like a little broom and a little vacuum, and he vacuums up all the stuff out of the keyboard, wipes the fingerprints. He's got fake fingerprints too. That's another thing. And then he'll take a little envelope and he'll deposit some of his skin flakes from Jude Law because he's passing himself off as that character.
Wow.
So something happens, there's a crime committed, and so this guy is brought in to investigate, and everybody. So the investigation starts to ramp up. Security checks are getting tougher and tougher and tougher. The mission is getting closer and closer, and Jude is panicking because now he has to. Sorry, not Jude. The Ethan Hawke character has to really maintain his identity so he can get onto the mission, because otherwise, if they find him out, he's going to get kicked out, obviously as an imposter. And if he misses the window, the next one is too long, and by then for sure they're going to catch up to him. And he meets Uma Thurman, who works there too, and she starts to, they start sort of dating, and she's not quite sure what's going on with him. And the investigator shows up, and he's trying to investigate the crime because there's been a murder committed. And so the whole thing now is starting to really ramp up. Very nice, like it's a good noir. It's like a science fiction noir. Okay. And then you've got a detective, you've got and everything, and intertwined, and then you find out this very special relationship between the detective and our Ethan hot character, and a very dramatic end.
Okay, that did it for me. Science fiction noir. That's good.
Really smart sci-fi in the sense that we're not playing with ray guns here. There's no aliens. There's no robots going around. Well, there might be robots doing cleaning. I forget. But it's not based on that. It's based on the premise, a very smart premise that everything is based on your genes and how would you game the system if you could.
Almost sounds like a Black Mirror episode in a way, you know?
Yeah, kind of does. Yeah.
Well, they often say that the best science fiction isn't about the technology so much as it's about putting people in moral hazard or moral jeopardy in novel technological circumstances, and that kind of like sort of disarms us, so we don't notice, and the story unfolds from there. Yeah. I don't know who made that up.
Well, I guess you did now.
Yeah, maybe I did. Yeah.
So that's Gattaca. Really worth. I don't think it did very well in the theaters when it came out. It's good. But to me, anytime I can get a chance, it pops up on the streaming services, I'll watch it again.
Yeah, well, doing well in the box office, I think we would both agree, doesn't necessarily, not doing well doesn't necessarily mean you don't see a movie.
No, exactly. And I don't think any of these movies here did particularly well. Well, maybe The Spy Who Came In From the Cold.
Yeah, I wonder even, eh?
Yeah.
I wonder.
So we'll pivot off to your next one, Dave.
Okay, so in keeping with the lighthearted theme of this week's podcast, I'm going to talk about The Mist from 2007, which is from a book by Stephen King, and I've always been a big Stephen King fan. I used to read all of his books as they came out. The director, and this is important, is a guy called Frank Darabont, who went on to direct The Walking Dead, which I think started maybe 2009, 2010, so there's not much of a gap between the two. And in fact, as you're watching this movie, you will notice that 3 of The Walking Dead cast members appear in The Mist. Okay, so what's it about?
They appear in The Mist?
Yeah, they appear in The Mist. They appear in The Mist. I don't know. What's it about? I'll read the synopsis and then build on it. A freak storm in this particular small town somewhere in the United States unleashes a mist, an enormous cloud that overtakes a small town, and a bunch of people wind up stuck in the local grocery store trying to figure out what's going on as they begin to realize there are creatures in the mist or some sort of danger in the mist. It starts off, you meet the main character played by a guy called Thomas Jane, who went on to be the star of Hung, which is one of the most underrated TV shows I've ever, to get knocked down on a tangent. It's fantastic in that. After this freak storm, he takes his son shopping, just a standard, going down to the grocery store to get some stuff. And while we're in there, again, the mist rolls over the town and gushes up against the windows of this grocery store. Imagine you're at the local Loblaws IGA. Boom. Suddenly you can't see outside and there's a bunch of characters trapped inside. And it's in here in this cauldron of people that the drama unfolds as they begin to realize there's something going on out there. And, there's characters who are refusing to believe what's happening. They're going to go out. One says, that's it. Like, I'm not staying in here. Goes out. They hear screams. He's gone. There's one of the pivotal characters in the movie is a woman who turns out to be a religious fanatic, and she sees what's going on inside the grocery store as an analogy for sin, and this is God's wrath brought upon mankind. So what's really interesting is while there's this unknown terror outside, you really don't see much of it within the confines of the grocery store. The people in there, just random group of people living in the same town, wind up in this kind of almost a metaphor for human society. There's the terrified ones, there's the confident ones, there's the ones looking for a reason to blame this on somebody else, and they all start to kind of bounce off each other and fall apart as we become gradually aware that there are in fact some weird fucking creatures out there in the mist. There's some decent special effects. It's not a special effects movie per se. I will say it winds up with one of the awfulest endings I can think of. It's like it's talked about.
Awful in what sense? Meaning like it spoils the movie, or it's just...
No, it's not that. You're just like, oh my God. Like, I can't believe he did that sort of thing. Okay. In a positive way. It just leaves you feeling really, really empty and depressed inside.
Like most of this list.
Like most of this list. Yeah, that's like most of the movies on this list. Well, we haven't even got to movies. Never mind. At any rate, I found this, it's one of those movies I go back to. I feel like watching again from time to time. There's some great, and it's all about the character interactions inside the grocery store. There's a great character there who plays Thomas Jane, the main character's neighbor. When the storm hit, the neighbor, I think one of Thomas Jane's trees fell on the neighbor's boat courthouse, and they get into this little spat about it. Then they wind up looking at each other in the IGA. They get into a little fight, and this guy's kind of a super obnoxious big city lawyer, and Thomas Jane's just like he's an illustrator or something, regular guy. And this whole conflict goes on, and it's just people bouncing off each other, and they can't leave the store.
So the monsters, the mist doesn't create monsters out of the people, right? It's monsters that come through the mist.
They're monsters in the mist, and you do wind up finding out.
No gorillas, though.
No gorillas in the mist, no. Monsters in the mist, and it turns out that there's a top secret military installation nearby where something's gone wrong. They've torn open a doorway between two dimensions or something of that nature. It's not a big part of the movie, but there's some logic behind it. And this is what's descended on the townspeople.
Probably New England, I'm guessing.
Oh, of course it's New England, yeah. It might be Castle Rock, if I'm not mistaken.
That is the name of his company, right?
Everything's in Castle Rock. Or the other one was, it was Denby, Maine or something. It was in all his books. I've screwed that up. So that is The Mist. Richard, you're next.
So from The Mist, we're going to go to The Conjuring.
Good times.
Good times. The Conjuring, 2013, James Wan, known for such movies as Saw.
Oh, he did Saw?
He did Saw, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I didn't realize. I only saw that after.
Yeah.
And I saw one of his movies the other day called Insidious.
Never heard of it.
Which is 2010. Terrible. You can see where he went from that. It's a kind of the ghost story kind of thing, possession story. From there to The Conjuring, and basically he had a story. He tried it. It didn't really work. He went back, I think, to the drawing board and came out with the masterpiece that The Conjuring is. So had he not done Insidious, The Conjuring probably would have been terrible.
Right. Now, I've seen The Conjuring, full disclosure. I had seen Richard, and I was like, a great choice. So, yeah.
I've seen them all. There's I think 5 or 6 in the series.
Oh, is that what's happened there?
Yeah,
okay,
it keeps going. They get progressively worse. The Conjuring 1 and 2 and 3, I think, are okay because you have the main characters, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga and Ron Livingston in it, the main 2 characters. So they play Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren, who were based on real people who were paranormal investigators and famously investigated the Amityville Horror.
Oh.
Yeah, that's where their claim to fame is. Oh. There's also the famous Annabelle doll, which plays a small part in the movie.
Right.
So in their house, they have a house with a specific room that has all the evil things they've picked up. And there's the Annabelle doll. So there's a whole spin-off about Annabelle also with the crazy doll that will possess you. And so it's like their closet of curiosities, if you want, their cabinet of
trophies, really.
Trophies,
trophies.
But all evil stuff. And they have like a kid, and the kid's not allowed to go in there because it's the room of evil, and you can get possessed by the things that are in there. And so they get called to. So you start with this family who buys. They move into this big old house, and strange things start appearing. They're hearing noises. Stuff's happening. And slowly, the family is getting more and more scared. And the mom is attending a talk by Ed Warren, I believe, Ed and Lorraine, and approaches them after and invites them back to the house. And they come to the house and they start. So think Poltergeist, where someone from outside comes in to investigate. And over a series of time, there's these things happen in the house. Now, as opposed to Poltergeist, which is, deals a lot with special effects. That scene in Poltergeist when they open the door and all the toys are spinning around in the room, or the thing with the chairs where the chairs realign themselves. None of that. It's done in a very, very, I don't want to say subdued because it's not, because the scares that do happen are quite good.
Yeah.
There's one particular scene where someone's in the basement and then, they keep hearing this clapping sound and then all of a sudden you hear right behind them, and they just show hands. Just very, very scared the shit out of me when it happens. Yeah. It's 2 claps.
Isn't there a scene where there's like the spirit is like crammed on top of a cupboard or something like that, and they pan across the room, and you go like it's
very exactly. It's one of the kids gets trapped in the cupboard.
Yeah. Like this thing. Oh my god! Yeah,
but it's done. It's a really well done movie, and it got an R rating, even though there's no swearing, no sex, no nudity, no violence, no blood, simply because the movie was scary. They had to give it an R rating. Well, and apparently in the Philippines, they had to bring in priests to the movie theaters to bless people after, because some of them said they felt the presence during the movie.
Wow.
Kind of weird.
A bit over.
Kind of weird.
Too much popcorn.
Yeah. So this is, again, based on a true story of this family that had this, they were living in this house and the house was possessed. But really, really well done. The character, nothing is overdone. The characters are really well done. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga do a great job as the Warrens investigating this and really giving you that, you know, the whole background, how they're going to do this. And it's really, really well done. And it's a good old scary movie without having any monsters show up. And of course, there's a big scene at the end where they finally cleanse the house kind of thing. But to me, it's one of the, if you ask me to pick you a horror movie, it's going to be in my top 3.
Yeah, I'd be up there too. Like I said, I had seen it and I had a similar reaction to you. I found it, I love the fact that it was scary without the typical, you know, jump scare stuff. It was just really atmospheric and creepy. And that persisted all the way through. I think it's set back in the 70s. So like Ed and his wife had he got slightly, like why did that matter? Well, it just gave it a period look.
It puts you there
somewhere else, you know, instead of just present day, right? You know, cars are a bit older. It's just
and it's one of the few movies I don't think they do this. It's they shot it in chronological order. There's a little piece of trivia because usually you think a movie is shot that way, right? Yeah. We're going to start with the openings, and often they'll do whatever has to be done on location together, and it's all done in editing. But this was actually shot that way, And Patrick Wilson does a great job in it. They go on to do a few more of these movies, really good. Some of them get a little more outlandish as you get down into the series. Good old fashioned scary movie. I don't want to say a smart horror movie, but it kind of has that feel that we're not relying on buckets of gore.
No, I think you can call it a smart horror movie. I think that's fair to say. Not like Saw.
not like Saw, which I haven't seen.
I saw it. I haven't saw it. Saw. I actually seen Saw a few years ago. I don't know what I was doing. It's a weird trip.
All right, Dave, back to you.
Okay, so finally something a little bit lighthearted.
It's true. You know what? Of all the movies, that's probably the only lighthearted one.
I think it is actually, yeah. So we've got kind of 19 kind of soul-gripping, terror fests. There was a couple. Gattaca wasn't really terrifying, was it?
No. It's true. But it's not really up. It's okay.
No rom-coms in here.
No.
So mine from 2011, directed by J.J. Abrams, he of Star Trek fame and others, is called Super 8. It was produced by Steven Spielberg, and it's got a very Spielbergian flavor to it. And I love this type of movie because it's what I call a coming-of-age movie. Think Stranger Things. Think Stand By Me from back in the mid-'80s, where the group of characters, like a little ensemble group of characters, and they're like 12, 13, 14 years old, kind of in those in-between years where everything seems possible and you hang out together and, mom and dad are still making supper, but you play all day, all that stuff. And this is set during the summer of 1979, which again, for me, I remember the summer of 79 like it was yesterday. So I'm right there, right? Like in terms of what's going on. And this group of friends, 5 or 6 of them, are making a movie at Super 8. They're making a movie because they just, school's out and they're making a movie. And they accidentally witness something they're not supposed to witness. While they're filming one of the scenes of their movie, they witness a train crash is captured by the camera, and something was on the train and escapes from the train.
Okay.
And thus unfolds the story, and pretty soon the town is crawling with military personnel looking for what was on the train. They continue making their movie. A little love story develops between one of the kids, the nerdiest of the kids, and the one kind of pretty girl who's part of their gang. And there's this great dynamic going on with the 5 or 6 of them. I love it. It warms my heart, that kind of stuff. And we slowly begin to realize that what was on the train may have been a life form from somewhere else. And
Chicago?
This is life form from Chicago, something like that, or Dubuque. And it has escaped, and the military's after it. The guy who shows up is a real dick. The actor, you recognize him when you see him. And he suspects the kids, those rascally kids, like kind of a Scooby-Doo vibe there sort of thing. Meanwhile, they're just trying to complete their movie, and anyways, it goes on. It's a terrific, I would call it a feel-good movie, in a sense, because of just the chemistry between the cast members. They're all great young actors, and they play off of each other so well. And I believed I could be part of that gang. I could see myself in there. It never happened, but I was right with it. Just like Stranger Things a bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's well done. It's set in a period we can easily identify with because we lived through that. Yeah, I saw the movie. I enjoyed it very much, and it's got that Spielbergy kind of happy-go-lucky. Nobody, the main characters are not going to die or get dismembered.
That's a good point. Exactly. You know everyone's going to be okay in the end.
Pretty much. So it was good. I saw it on one of the streaming services when it came out on streaming. Good movie. I enjoyed it. I haven't seen it since then. I've seen it once, but I enjoyed it.
And so back on the darker side of things, Richard.
Okay, so for my penultimate movie, I'm gonna go with Melancholia from 2011, a Lars von Trier movie.
What a name, eh?
Oh, I know, and he does bizarre stuff. He does some really out there stuff. Starring Kirsten Dunst, Charlotte Gainsbourg, Kiefer Sutherland, and Alexander Skarsgård.
Oh, I know who that is. Yeah, I know that dude. Yeah.
He was in True Blood. He's been in a bunch of things. He was in The Northman. So I'll read the description. Two sisters find their already strained relationship challenged as a mysterious new planet threatens to collide with Earth.
Fantastic.
So sci-fi, but also a really, really dark, depressing movie. So the main character, it starts off with a wedding. She's getting married to, Kirsten Dunst is getting married to Alexander Skarsgård. The wedding happens, la la la, she get through it. And on their wedding night, she sends him away. So she's going to spend time at the house. And the movie, basically, Kirsten Dunst suffers from massive depression. So throughout most of the movie, she has to be carried from tub to dining room to eat. And it's just this whole descent into depression. And as you see this giant planet getting closer and closer to Earth, and and you hear the news, the scientists, so we're thinking now we might be able to save the Earth, and this whole thing, and Kiefer Sutherland plays Charlotte Gainsbourg's husband, and he's one of the scientists, and he's getting info as to whether they're going to avoid disaster, and that thing is getting too big to not go away. It's the slow descent into madness of the characters and trying to have one last good moment as they know the inevitable is coming. And how people would deal. How would you deal with the end of the world?
Oh, I like that. I like that theme. Yeah. Okay.
So, we had, I don't know if you ever saw Deep Impact with Taya Leone.
No.
Great movie. It came out the same time as Armageddon, with Bruce Willis and the boys who slammed the rocket into the meteor to save the world. Well, Deep Impact went the other way, saying, we can't. We can't do it. So how do you prepare for the end of the world? Who's going to be saved or whatever?
Oh, I'm going to watch that.
So this is like a much smaller microcosm of it, because through most of the movie, there's only three characters. There's the two sisters and Kiefer Sutherland. And then by the end, it's their descent, their relationship, very strained, throughout her life. Kirsten Dunst's character is always, it's been going through depressions, might be bipolar, whatever. So there's a lot of heaviness there on that. So not the kind of thing you watch on date night, unless you're trying to end your relationship.
Netflix and not chill.
Yeah, exactly. But I enjoyed it. My wife absolutely hates this movie. She hates it. She hates it with a passion. Not crazy about movies that end with a terrible end. I don't mean terrible that the end is bad, but just like when, like the 300, when she watched the 300, she goes, 300, what? Yeah. They all die? I'm like, that's the point. How that goes, yeah. That's the point. No.
But don't tell me she hasn't seen The Mist then, has she?
I'm not sure if she's seen The Mist.
Don't show it to her. Yeah, okay.
Okay. I loved it. I mean, I love Kirsten Dunst. I'll watch her in anything.
Yeah, no, she's come up in a couple of years.
Yeah, she's in a couple of mine. She was in Marie Antoinette. She's been in a bunch of things. Okay. I think it's a great movie. Again, you have to be in the right frame of mind to watch it. It's a great end of the world movie. So Dave, back to you.
If that was your penultimate movie, which it was, then this is my ultimate movie in the truest sense of the word. It is called The Babadook.
Babadook.
Which is not a word that you would normally encounter, so I'll spell it. Babadook. The Babadook. It's Australian. It's the first directorial outing by a young director by the name of Jennifer Kent. Although apparently she had made a short film called, oh my God, the name's going to escape me. It's available on YouTube, which is the kind of the essence of what The Babadook became. And she was noted for that. And I think that helped to get the financing to produce The Babadook. What's going on in this movie? A very claustrophobic movie. Unknown cast of Australian actors, so there's no familiar touch points there.
Unknown to us.
Unknown to us. Yeah. Good point. Unknown to us. Sorry, Australia. A single mother, and she's single because her husband has died 6 years prior, and her 6-year-old son, who was born the day that her husband died in a car crash. So there's the situation, right? You're being driven to the hospital by your husband to give birth. Car crash, he dies, your son is born. Fast forward 6 years, and here you've got this relationship with this mother and the son in the house. He's got some behavioral difficulties and she's struggling with him, and you can tell that she hasn't come to terms with her grief. you know, there's this tension, or let's say a lack of communication between herself and her son as this relationship is introduced to us. One of the things she likes to do with him, however, at night is to read a book. And she sends him to the bookshelf and says, pick a book and we'll read it. Comes back on this particular night with a book called Mr. Babadook. She looked at it, she kind of looks at it, opens it up, and it's one of these books that got these cardboard foldouts.
A pop-up book.
A pop-up book.
Yeah.
Except it's a really creepy pop-up book. And all the pop-ups are it's all black and gray, and it's kind of a bit vicious looking. And it's, you know, and she's looking at it like, what the hell is this sort of thing? And it's all about this Babadook, and this Babadook, whatever that is, wants to be let in. It wants to be let into their house. Anyways, it turns out that the son, again, he has behavioral difficulties, partly brought on by the fact that his mother just doesn't seem to know how to relate to him because she associates him with her husband's death. And she, of course, because it's the same day, it's a horrible situation. And we begin to realize that what's going on here is it's almost like the whole situation is like a metaphor for her grief, her unresolved grief, as this Babadook thing starts to manifest itself in their house as a real entity. I'm not scared by much. The Conjuring gave me this fucking scared me. Like, it creeped me out. Just the way the special effects are done, it's very subtle. It's not about big flashy. It's just about this weird, creepy character slowly developing an overwhelming presence in their house. Meanwhile, the little boy has this whole thing going on where he tells his mother he thinks a monster is coming to get them, and he keeps making these weapons to try and kill the monster, and that's making her mother angry because he fires things through the window at one point. He's got this ball launcher on his back. The whole thing begins to spiral out of control. She burns the book because she's so upset with it. It reappears on their front porch in perfect shape. She opens it up, and the story has changed, and it appears to be predicting the future events. It's really creepy. You feel for this woman. She's got no life. She works in an old folks' home. That's not the bad part, but she just seems to work and go home, and she's got this boy that she can't control, and he's screaming all the time, and it just...
There's no downtime.
There's no downtime. Yeah. No downtime for her. And it just spirals towards a very... I can't possibly give this away. A very interesting conclusion. Yeah. And you begin to realize in those final moments where the Babadook came from, in essence. And, you know, a question is left lingering. Is it real, or is it part of her subconscious or their collective subconscious? It's really, I think it's brilliant.
I saw it too. I saw it with my wife. I really enjoyed it.
You did see it?
Yeah, I did see it. That's it's one of the ones on your list. We loved it. My son saw it too. I think he might have actually recommended it to us. Okay, he's into a bit of a horror. Him and his girlfriend are doing a bit of a horror romp through the movies, and he recommended. I really like. And you're right. It is scary in the way to me that The Conjuring is, movies of that ilk, where they're not relying on super special effects, but it has such a feel to it. It's the kind of movie you turn the lights on after in the house as you go up to your bedroom. And I brush my teeth, turn on the light in the stairs, go to your bedroom, turn on the light before you get to bed, you know?
Well, I mean, just the name, the Babadook, right?
Oh, yeah.
Harmless enough, and yet it sounds bad. Yeah. Like I wouldn't want one in here.
And it doesn't sound of here. You know, it has a bit of it might be like an East Asian kind of thing. You know, I picture something carved or something. Yeah. It's got a great feel. It's Babadook. It's an interesting word. And I was just looking up Jennifer Kent, the director. She owns the rights to the movie. And when asked if there was a sequel, she said there will never be a sequel because it is the kind of movie that does not need a sequel. And I like that. Someone who can stand on there and say, you know what, one and done.
Yeah, some artistic integrity. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
So just to go with the Babadook, when my son was smaller, I was in Cole's chapters. Chapters. And I came across a pop-up book, and I'm like, oh, Stephen King did a pop-up book. Oh, no. It's a children's book. So I bought this thing, and it was a big, fat, like 3-inch thick book. So I get home, and I'm like, hey, Griffin, we're going to read this. So I started reading the story, and as I'm reading the story, I realized this is really not a kid's story, at least not his age. And so I had to read ahead really quickly. And then I would make up stuff for the stories. And, you know, you'd pull a tab and a monster would come out from behind the car. And so I invented a whole other story. And I read this to him many times. He never knew the whole story until one day when he was old enough, he read the actual story.
So it was intended for young people, this book?
Or it was a pop-up book.
A pop-up book?
It's the girl who loved Tom Gordon. So Tom Gordon is a pitcher, a baseball pitcher in the story. Yeah. And she has to go do something, or there's I think she's on a hike with her parents, and she ends up getting separated and ends up in this creepy part of the forest. And to keep herself from being scared and to fight the monsters she does meet, she thinks of Tom Gordon, the pitcher, and what would he do? You know, what would he? And she channels his energy to save her. But I remember for the longest time, I had to invent a different story, and I would the monsters weren't really monsters, and these pop-up things in the book.
Could have just returned the book. So are you a Stephen King fan in general?
Yes,
you are? Okay, because some people, I find people blow hot or cold on Stephen King, right?
So my thing with Stephen King is I read a bunch of stuff early on.
Yeah.
And then at one point I kind of got fed up. Like I moved on, and at one point I'm like, the guy's a hack. If you can produce that many books, you have to be a hack.
It was amazing, eh? How many books?
It's amazing. He cranks out 1 or 2 books a year, or he did. His production has slowed down in recent years. And then one day on CBC Radio, I heard an interview with him, and he was talking about, they talked about his book. He's got a book called On Writing, which is supposed to be a masterpiece about writing. And his book, I think it's called 1963 or whatever. It's about the JFK. It's like an alternate version of the JFK assassination.
No idea. Yeah.
Anyways, he described, and I you know what? I listened to him and I said, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And it gave me a new appreciation for Stephen King. And I went back and I started reading a bunch of stuff after that. And I'm like, I think I disparaged him for the wrong reasons. Just because he was productive, I thought they can't be good. But he was.
The curse of popularity, right?
Yeah, exactly. You got to hate something that's popular.
Well, I like you. I started reading him early. I remember Carrie was a thing in high school, the movie, and of course The Shining. And I would read his books as they came out, and he was like my guy. I kind of fell off the bandwagon somewhere around the Tommyknockers, which to me was starting to become right. Didn't make sense very much. And there was another one. What's it called? The Dreamcatcher or something like that?
Dreamcatcher. Oh, I like that. That's a good movie.
Yeah, I watched that again. That's a
good movie.
That's right. That's when they're all shitting everywhere sort of thing, right? Basically.
Well, they all have special powers. One has that, like the mind palace. He can keep secrets inside this big library in his head.
That's right. I think that's right.
Yeah. And at the end, it's the handicapped kid, the guy in the wheelchair who ends up being the superhero.
Right. But Dubbins or whatever sort of thing, right? Yeah, whatever. Yeah, because they're all in that cabin in the woods, right? And people, that thing leaps out of the toilet and like grabs whatever.
And I love the way when they get possessed, they get that look in their eyes.
Yeah.
That was a good movie. Yeah.
So that little aside on Stephen King, I just had to check. Yeah, check your credentials on it.
So our final movie is.
Yes.
I guess this would be my lighthearted movie.
Can I do a drum roll on the table?
So this is 3 Days of the Condor, 1975, directed by Sidney Pollack, starring Robert Redford, Faye Dunaway, Cliff Robertson, and Max von Sydow.
Oh, those were the days.
Oh, yeah. I'll read the premise. I love that term, bookish. A bookish CIA researcher in Manhattan finds all his coworkers dead and must outwit those responsible until he figures out who he can really trust. In essence, that's the story. But in reality, when you watch this thing, it's just under 2 hours. I watched this. It was on TV. I watched this with my older brother. And I remember at the time, it was moving. I had no idea what the hell was going on. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? I was too young at the time to really catch. But I've seen the movie multiple times since then. And every so often I'll dig it out and watch it. And I just love the feel of it. It's 1975.
Yeah.
This guy has the world's greatest job. He sits in an office with his coworkers and they read books looking for secret messages or things that might be flagged.
I feel like we could do that.
I could do that. Yeah, I could do that for sure. And he happens to he steps out to go to get coffee for them. Something like, he steps out. When he comes back, everyone's been assassinated in the office. And from there, he's like, what the hell happened? So he's got a number he can call, right? So if anything, because he works for the CIA. So he has like some sort of contact and he calls in and then things start to go whatever. People start showing up. Things start happening. He doesn't know who to trust. He ends up running into Faye Dunaway and ends up kind of kidnapping her and trying to enlist her to help him out.
I remember that,
And he's making these calls with all these people and he doesn't know who the hell to trust. People are turning up dead left, right, and center until he can unravel the entire mystery and see what was the purpose of that group and what they were looking for.
Yeah, atypical casting for Robert Redford, but he does a good job in it, sort of thing. You know, like I'd like you. I saw it when it came. Well, I think I saw it when it came out, and then I bought the book because I would often do that back in the day. I mean, you know, like I remember seeing The French Connection 2 and then going to buy the book. It all seemed to be at the local, you know, pharmacy where I could pick up the story. So I very much knew the story. So yeah, I like you, I loved it. And I think there's a whole scene in there that's filmed around the Twin Towers in New York. I think when he goes, and there's, you know, something poignant about that, right? Because they're not there anymore, as we well know. So there's kind of that thing, yeah.
I just saw this based on the novel 6 Days of the Condor.
Is it?
That's what it says.
Wow.
You said you have the book here somewhere. I'm looking at your bookcase. I don't see it.
I do. So
we'll have to dig it up.
The bunker.
Oh, it's in the bunker. Okay, yeah. Which appropriately,
yeah. So maybe it was a budgetary issue. They have to cut it. We can't do that. We have to go 3 days of the Condor.
We can't go more than 2 hours.
Yeah. It sounds better. 3 days of the Condor.
Yeah, it does. 6 days sounds a little
weird. It
rolls
off the tongue better. Yeah,
it does. It's a great movie, good pacing, great performances by everybody. You're never always quite sure what's going on, who's good, who's bad. And I think even at the end, once it's resolved, you're a little bit left of like, this is the good guy really a bad guy, or was the bad guy a good guy?
I don't remember that.
You're not quite sure what the heck happens, and he evades the fate of his character. Well, we'll say that, but as to why, well, you'd have to watch the movie to see why. Yeah.
Excellent choice. Yeah, when I saw that on your list, I was happy to see it there because it's a bit of a you know, underrated classic, I would call it.
Yeah, I don't know if it did well at the time. Robert Redford, this is 73. This is like his
it's a big draw then, yeah.
Yeah, it would have been a big draw, exactly. Budget 20 million, gross 27.
Oh, so not so well.
Yeah, and worldwide gross is 27. So this is in the 40, 50 years since it's been out. It made its money, but it probably took a long time.
Yeah, okay, it took a long time.
So there we are. That's 20 movies in alphabetical order.
20 movies in some sort of order, ascending order of horror.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, well, not in my case.
So I think I really enjoyed listening to your choices and talking about the movies. Brought back some great memories. We both love film, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. Who doesn't love film?
And definitely, I'm going to go back and watch some of the ones on your list.
Oh yeah, I'm going to go for some of yours. Yeah, 100%. There's a couple that when I saw the synopsis, like I got to get at that thing, you know. Even if I have to rent the damn thing. Yeah.
And for those of you out there, hope you've seen some of these and it brings back memories. And if there's some that are interesting, hope we piqued your curiosity and that you'll give them a watch.
And while you're at it, drop us a rating on Apple if you're enjoying our podcast, or Spotify for that matter. Let us know how you feel.
That'd be great. Thanks, Dave.
Have a great week.